two spades, jack of diamonds, jack of clubs.
Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, really that kind of I'm going to attitude really inspired me a lot. Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Evil Dead, those all really got me. And then as I got more into it, I started getting into things like Dead Alive and Peter Jackson's old stuff. And they were all people doing amazing practical effects.
Anatomy really informs us quite a bit on, especially for surgery stuff. You have to know a lot of anatomy to be able to do basically any kind of practical effects when it comes to human work.
Because I wasn't allowed to see it, the only thing I would watch on my own without my mom knowing was surgeries on TV. Every day after school, I would watch plastic surgeries or something on TV that was with gore. And I was like, whoa, like our bodies are made of this.
A lot of the dead bodies, a lot of the surgical scenes that you see, most of those things are fabricated. They're not sculpted. It's just me with a bunch of foam and some silicone and some brushes, right? So that's my specialty. That's what I'm the best at, is like the gore gags and the things like that. So the bathtub thing for summer of '84, it was mostly raspberry jam.
Fucking bring back practical effects, guys. It's so important, and it's a dying craft. And there's places like ADI and all of these phenomenal companies that do practical effects. We've got great places in Vancouver. And I think that there's something very organic and nostalgic about that in horror that sometimes is being lost. And I think when you're low budget and you're using practical, you're forced to be more creative. And I think usually those solutions look better on camera.
It's hard for, I think, anybody to suspend disbelief when they're acting to nothing in front of a green screen. Whereas with the practical, even if it's augmented with visual effects, is still better to have because there's something there for the actor to act to and to emote to, right? In the last few years, there's been a lot more females in our industry, a lot more women that are really into like creatures and that effect and stuff like that. Normally we were kind of pushed into the beauty realm, like you do this, the men do the creatures and the gore, whereas now it's there's way more women. We have it easier dealing with blood and, you know, the things that happen with our bodies, because I find a lot of men do have are a little more queasy when it comes to blood. I know way more men that pass out at the sight of it versus women. And I think it's because we do have to deal with it quite often.
She found a lot of women that are more gross than men. Like when you get down to candid talk, you know, it's just like, oh yeah, you know, no biggie. But then men kind of get squeamish over that too. It used to be sort of like a zombie kind of thing, which kind of evolved to, I don't even know how, to the lead character preying on men and turning them into animals.
Yeah, I guess I always think back to the classic film Ginger Snaps about, you know, puberty and physical changes that are maybe more in touch with body horror than boys and men are.
One of my favorite female-driven horror narratives is American Mary. I think that the Soska twins did such an excellent job of that. Catherine Isabel actually was also in Ginger Snaps. That was another good female-driven werewolf movie.
The ones that shook me when I was younger was Interrupted Girl with Winona Ryder, and one that is not as much as a strong stereotype, but Heathers, that really stuck with me too.
There's Martyrs, which is one of my favorite films of all time, because it's like not only the concept has just always been what has rattled me to my core, but it was done so well.
They carry all the sins of the world. It's their sacrifice.
High Tension, which is a French horror film. The Descent is a great one. I Spit on Your Grave. Inside is kind of like my nightmare.
River's Edge is one of my favorite films. I think it really captured, you know, I was in, I think I was just out of high school at that point, or very, very late in my high school existence. And it really, I grew up in Brandon, Manitoba, and that disaffected Gen X sort of world was basically what I lived in, living in like small town, watching horror films, listening to metal, driving up and down the same stretch of highway essentially, and getting drunk was the only things we were doing.
Oh, it's warm even. You don't even care, do you?
I ain't drinking it.
About yourself, you dumb fuck.
I look back at it again and again, and I just look at those performances, and I look at that. It just puts me back in that time where, you know, again, that's my world, with this Cold War looming over us, and you know, just having Slayer in the background. I think that was sort of it. Heavy metal basically goes very closely with horror, I think, and I definitely think it goes with my prairie roots. But yes, there's a rhythm. I think everything we listen to gives us a rhythm. So if I were someone who listened to maybe classical music or pop, maybe this wouldn't have happened to me. I don't know whether horror would have been there, but I do know that, you know, even seeing the early videos and the images, that's still something that affects like how I direct. And so, you know, I just thought about Metallica's one video. I remember like that was their first video, and waiting for it to drop on like video hits, and watching it over and over again. And that, you know, the images are very much still there. And then to this day, seeing Floria Sigismondi's work on Marilyn Manson's Beautiful People, like just the frame rate changes and like all the things that she was doing, like she's still one of my hugest influences as far as the way things look and the way things are lit. So for sure, metal videos and the music and that rhythm that goes and the imagery that's in the lyrics really still absolutely affect what I do.
I love female revenge. And like when I saw I Spit on Your Grave, it was just like a glorifying moment of like, finally someone fucking fights back, because I was getting like, I watched so many horror movies in high school, and it was just always the same horror trope, right? So seeing those films actually did push me into getting into filmmaking, because I was just like, you know, wow, I haven't seen this and I want to make this.
Rebel Without a Crew, that book is really inspiring because it just makes you feel that anything is possible, no matter what it is you're trying to make. But in this case, filmmaking is a really tough industry, is a really cruel and sometimes somewhat, you know, discouraging. And when I read Rebel Without a Crew, you know, first thing I said, wow, it's another Mexicano, it's another guy trying to make it, and made it with nothing. So it's just a reminder that you put your mind to something and your heart to something without, you know, a very good quote I go by, to not be afraid of failure. If you go by that, you can really do anything. It doesn't have to be about film. And that book really teaches that. It teaches you just what dedication can do, whatever it is you choose to do.
My favorite female-driven narratives, which if you see Ready to Burst, you can see how it inspired it a lot, is Rosemary's Baby. Seeing just how she's gaslit constantly by her partner and just basically used as this object that she doesn't, and she's doing her best to try and get people to listen to her and see her as a person and not just a vessel for a baby.
My inspiration for Ramshackle Blues was definitely drawn on true romance. Natural Born Killers was another one that really impacted me when I was growing up, and the colors and the vibrant, shocking nature of it. So it's almost done in this cartoony sense with the production design, but then the gore and the story is based in realism.